Okay, great. Um, I hope I will know. Когда мы пойдем в эфир, вы скажите, пожалуйста, хорошо?
Мгм.
Custom live streaming. Okay.
Yeah. I think we are online.
В эфире.
Когда мы пойдем в эфир, вы скажите, пожалуйста. Okay, yes, we are live. So, hello, this is Eka, and today I am so thrilled to have Sal Rachele with me because Sal had a tremendous impact in my life and my path in what I have learned and what I have done in many years. And so today I want to do an interview of how it is to be in spirituality for so many years, because Sal has been in this for over 40 years altogether. You started in your early 20s, I think, right, Sal? And now it's been over 40 years. So let me introduce Sal to those of you who maybe don't know him. So Sal is internationally known spiritual teacher with a number of books, I think 6, or is it 7 now?
Seven.
Seven now, yes, 7 books translated into different languages, and he's been traveling the world for the last, I don't know, what, 15 years or so, doing
More than
workshops.
that, I think more like 20 years.
20
Yeah.
years, yes, traveling different countries of the world, doing retreats and workshops and seminars and beautiful soul music concerts and all different kinds of things, helping people evolve, helping people get through their obstacles, teaching them how to open up their inner guidance and the light of their soul. And Sal's work impacted me and my path in the most in the biggest way than everybody else, actually, than anybody else I have ever learned from. So I feel a huge gratitude to Sal and honored to be with him today to ask him a few questions about his path. And the questions actually combine, some are from me and some are from other Sal students that we have in our community. And so let's begin. And the questions I have are separated into 2 parts. So the first part are more like personal questions about your path, because many people are interested in how it is to be Sal Rachele and how it is to live your life. And um, and the other part of questions are some different questions on spiritual path and what's happening in the world, etc. So let's start with the first part about you. And so you had a very long spiritual path altogether, and of course it all merged with your professional path, and it's been a long, beautiful road. But looking back in all of those over 40 years, what were the biggest learnings and shifts? Probably difficult to answer right now, but whatever comes to your mind, what were the biggest changes that you, or the biggest learnings that you went through during that time?
Well, back in the 1970s, I had some rather profound awakenings that are still standing out as pivotal points in my own path. And one of those, I was a computer technician in the Silicon Valley of California in the mid 70s. And at night, I would attend various spiritual and metaphysical groups, more out of fascination at that point, because I was always interested in psychic phenomena and things like that. More what you'd call parapsychology, which is the more scientific name for psychic and intuitive functioning. And I had one evening when I was sitting out on my balcony looking out over the Silicon Valley, and it was as though somebody had just taken the top off of my consciousness and just downloaded this tremendous download of information where I saw, the future of humanity, and I saw my own future, and it was very profound. And then I had another experience a few days later where this presence, immense presence, filled the room and said that it was the living Christ was the message I got. And I realized now that it was Lord Sananda, the oversoul of Jesus, that had come to me in that moment. And there was a third experience I had where I became acutely aware of the extraterrestrial presence and how we have not been alone since our inception, basically, that we are cared for by higher beings from higher dimensions. So these were some of my early openings back in the mid 1970s. And then various things happened. I joined a holistic healing community uh, over the mountains to the sea from where I was originally. And then I went to a community up in the mountains, started by Leonard Orr, the founder of Rebirthing, became deeply involved in rebirthing and various yogas and things of this nature. And I didn't start channeling until, well, in the late 1980s. My personal spirit guide, Leah, came to me in Sedona, Arizona, and reminded me of who she was. And I started communicating with her. And then I didn't start publicly channeling until around the year 2000 because I was a little bit down on channeling. A lot of channeled information doesn't feel right. It's compromised, in my humble opinion, by various, shall we say, less than evolved beings. And so I was a little reluctant to be a channel, and then so I was very careful, picked, and my spirit guides very carefully the ones I wanted to work with. There were more than that that wanted to work with me, but I kind of was very selective who I wanted to work with. So it's been about 20 years that I've been, maybe 22, 23 years that I've been channeling professionally.
And so for you personally, of course, that changed everything in your life, obviously, absolutely everything. But now in this point here, what is like the key theme of your life, if I should say, like what's the main goal that you're looking for? What's the purpose that you're pursuing personally? What this brought all of that? What that brought you to?
Yes, I would say that balancing the material plane with the spiritual plane, which is not an entirely accurate statement because everything is spiritual, but there's this narrow little band we call the light spectrum, which is visible light that we can see with our eyes. And then, of course, there's also a sound spectrum where we can hear with our ears. And that's the physical universe, basically, the part that we can register with our physical senses, which is this tiny little band between infrared and ultraviolet, which is the much larger spiritual universe. So, really, the physical is like a little bubble contained within a larger spiritual realm. However, it seems if you're in a human body on earth that the laws of this world and the laws of God don't seem like they're on speaking terms. And all you have to do is look at the whole win-lose model of reality that if I win, somebody else has to lose. If they win, I have to lose, that whole mentality. So part of this is about overcoming that mentality and really seeing that we live in a win-win universe and that God's love pours out on all of creation equally. The sinner and the saint are both loved by God equally. Yes, there's consequences to bad behavior. There's cause and effect. There's a law of gravity, that you have consequences if you don't obey these laws. But God's love is constant. It doesn't diminish because we disobey some law or we think a negative thought or whatever. So part of my path is to be a living example of a balance between the material and the spiritual, knowing that ultimately there's only the spiritual.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's also something I came down to, that this balance is crucial. And that was actually one of the questions that the audience asked, that how do you combine the regular life that we all have to live in the physical body, like washing the dishes and cooking the breakfast kind of thing, with all the amazing spiritual experiences, with the spiritual work that you do every day? How is that combined?
Well, it does involve some degree of time management, which was a bit of an issue today, trying to find space to do this interview. But but it's really about seeing God in everything, including the dirty dishes. That's part of God too, in a different form than a beautiful flower garden. And so there's contrast. We're not saying everything should be just perfect, like harps on a cloud, kind of perfect, but we see that God is at work in the so-called negatives as well as the positives. And that's not easy to do for most of us. You know, we look at the war between Russia and Ukraine, for example, and it's really hard to find something positive about that, you know, that oh, God is in this war. Well, that's a hard one to grasp. And
Yeah.
to the extent that we're able to see God in things like war, is the extent toward which we become true peacemakers. We're emanating a vibration of love to the people who are dying in war, for example, and we're sending love and compassion to Putin and Zelensky and whoever else is involved. And it doesn't mean we approve of what they're doing, but we're sending love, we're sending compassion to everyone involved in things such as war. And yeah, we're
And there's
learning to do
still
that
soul,
as spiritual human beings.
yeah, and there is still soul lessons involved in all of that. And everybody who is getting experiences because their soul are asking for that kind of experience. I think that also gives a little bit of peace when you realize that souls that had enough of war experience, they don't get into wars, and souls who feel like war experience is something they are interested in, as harsh as it is, they get into that kind of setup.
Yeah, a lot
And
of young souls want to experience what war is all about. The soul is curious. It wants to experience everything. And oh, I want to know what poverty is. I want to know what suffering is, you know. And of course, as you become more evolved, you realize, you know, there are higher vibrational realms that I want to explore where there's a lot of love and compassion, where we don't have war, poverty, misery, and suffering. And so we start to make different choices. But in the beginning, it's like, oh, I'm like a kid in a candy store and I want to try this brand of candy and that brand. And ooh, this one doesn't taste good, you know.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And to souls, all kinds of experiences are interesting. There is no good or bad. There's just everything is curious.
Yeah.
Um,
And the problem is when we start falling into judgment, you know, we judge ourselves, we think we're a miserable sinner and that we deserve to be punished, and some bearded man up on a cloud is going to punish us or something, you know. That then we get that's what gets us into trouble, is this judgment.
I agree. I agree. So, what daily practices do you personally use, if any? What kind of things keep you in balance of this material and spiritual?
Well, of course, there's breathing techniques. Oftentimes, before bed, we do some different kinds of breathing techniques. And one of the studies here at this community is A Course in Miracles, and so we will often read from A Course in Miracles and do some meditations based on the course. We also have yoga programs here, so we will do various yoga routines. And I personally like walking in nature. It's a little challenging this time of the year because this is the hot season here in Mexico. But, you know, just tuning in to, we have a beautiful garden here at the house, and tuning into the beautiful plants, exotic plants. We have an avocado tree and a pomegranate tree and some fig trees. And yeah, so just really appreciating the beauty that's all around us. I think that's a big part of it. And participating in the various events at the community, whether it's a satsang where we're doing some chanting or we're doing music. We have a resident musician here, and we like to do, tonight there's going to be some artificial intelligence generated music, which at first glance, ooh, do I want to be part of that? But it's amazing. You can even hear the human beings breathing while they're singing, and yet it's all AI generated. It's like, what?
Yeah, AI is amazing these days, what it can do. It's true.
But mostly it's about sharing the journey. We have mostly older people. A lot of people here are retired. There's some healers and therapists, and we share our journey with each other. Help each other grow and evolve. So that's why we're doing community here. There's a time and a place to be a hermit or to be in an ashram or a monastery. This community is really not like an ashram, although we have a sister community up the hill. It's a little bit more like an ashram because we're in the middle of a Mexican town. And so we can walk out one side and we have the community. We walk out the other side, we have a Mexican village, with people selling tortillas on the, side of the street and things like that. Um, so it's a little bit of both, the more cloistered, hermitage kind of approach, and then being in the world at the same time. So we do have a little bit of that balance right here. And I think that's important for everybody to have that a sense of balance where you recharge yourself by being around like-minded people, and then you go out into the world and you deal with airports and things like that.
Yes. And how did you manage to deal with the burnout? I mean, you've given so many years of such intensive work to people, and I know because I worked with you for a number of years personally, and I know how many hours you put into your work, and it always amazed me because spiritual work requires extra energy. It's not something simple that you just do automatically. It requires a lot of attention. And you could go for weeks with just one day off, working 6 to 8 hours a day. And I was like, how in the world do you do that? And how did you manage not to burn out doing it for dozens of years? So that's
Well,
something
part of
that,
it,
how did you do?
yeah, part of it is that I'm starting to really get a handle on which thoughts are necessary and which thoughts are not necessary. And I've come to the conclusion about three-fourths of all our thoughts are not necessary. And when you're constantly thinking and excessively thinking, as we all do pretty much, it dissipates energy. And we lose a lot of energy worrying about the past and the future and what's going to happen tomorrow. And going over something over and over in the mind, that really just has to be dealt with once. It's like, oh, okay, I have a flight tomorrow. Here's my calendar entry or whatever I'm going to use to remind myself in the case I forget. And now I don't have to think about it. Oh, it's 7 o'clock. I need to go to the airport or whatever it is. And but the old way of thinking would be, oh my God, what if the weather's not good? What if my flight's delayed? What if this? What if that? And you could check all that real quick and then be done with it and move on to other things. And so I'm using that as a practical example. When it comes to clients and how to not burn out when working with clients, I have to, as long as I've been doing this work, I have to double check and make sure I'm not taking on energy from my clients, that I'm staying in a neutral space and sending love and compassion rather than getting triggered by something they say and that sort of thing. And of course, I've done thousands of appointments over the years, and so I've become pretty adept at that. But nevertheless, it's important to monitor. The body is a wonderful feedback system. It'll tell you when you're taking on negative energy. You'll start getting exhausted or tired or irritable or upset or whatever. And so the body has a wonderful way of reminding you to get centered and grounded. And when people don't listen to the body, it gets sick.
That's true. But
And yeah.
once you notice that something is wrong, what do you do? What are your remedies?
Well, usually I start with a lot of breathing and I start asking myself, what's really important in this situation? What's the most important thing about whatever it is that's going on? And then you get rid of a lot of the extraneous, not so important things, and you just focus on what's really important. And I've had to simplify a little bit. There was a time when I would do 8 clients a day, and now I do between 3 and 6 clients a day, depending on where I am and what the format is. And I realize that people have to wait for sessions, and it's I don't particularly like people having to wait to get a session, but I also realize that quality is the most important thing. And in order for me to put out a high quality energy to people, I have to take care of this body and take care of the emotions and mind and subtle bodies and so on. And so that's why I put a limit on how much work I do.
Yeah, that's very important. I've seen so many people burn out and just stop doing what they were doing at some point, regardless whether it's work with people or not.
It's really
So
more of a challenge to find space for things like, buying groceries and, things like that are more of a challenge than working with clients.
well, you need to get someone who's helping you on that, I guess.
Well, we have housekeepers and, people like that, they work for us, but so that helps. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, that also needs some attention. It doesn't have to be your attention.
Mhm.
So is there anything that you're pursuing at this time in your life? Any personal goals that you're working on?
Well, I've been intermittent fasting 2 days a week, and I've lost about 3 kilos from doing that. And so my intention is, along with doing the workouts and things like that, to have a youthful, healthy body well into my 90s and hundreds. And of course, we talk a lot about physical ascension, and if I'm not enjoying being in this vehicle, then I'm not going to want to take it into the higher dimensions. And so, really, one of the priorities is to take really good care. I've always taken reasonably good care of my body, but now it's like I'm fine tuning a little bit,
Mhm.
to really take care of it. On a higher level. So that's, I think, one project. Um, yeah, everything seems to be going fairly smoothly regarding my personal relationships. Um, my mother is 99 and she's got some health issues. I just recently visited her. Uh, she went to a hospital to get some tests. They immediately wanted to drug her up, with various pills and stuff. And I'm thinking, this is the mentality that we're dealing with, especially with physical health. Just give her a pill. And so there's things like that, family issues and medical issues. But I come from a longevity family. My father was 99 when he passed away, although he had a number of health issues prior to that. And my mother might make it to 100, so we'll see. And
So you
yeah,
still have
it's
another like 40 years to go around that in that terms, or maybe ascension is an option as well. So
well,
still a lot to
spiritual
do.
ascension is always an option. And if we decide that it's too much work to perfect the body, then we can leave it behind and go into the higher dimensions. And then we have all these choices available to us once we spiritually ascend. We can create a new body, we can go into a higher dimension, a lower dimension, another planet, stay in the spirit realms, become a spirit guide to others. Lots of options available once you go through spiritual ascension. So it doesn't have to be taking the body with you into the higher dimensions, although that is going to become easier in the coming years. My guides have been talking about that for quite a while now, that
Mhm.
there's going to come a time when the vibration of Earth is going to be high enough that many of us are going to be able to choose physical ascension.
It's beautiful. So, do you still foresee population decrease, something that you've been talking about in your books for some time already? And what should people be prepared for at this time specifically? Because things change, and of course, the timelines change. So what is actual information that you have at this time?
The actual information I have at this time is that yes, there will be a decrease in population. It's pretty much going to follow the original prophecy from the founders and others. The timetable has changed somewhat. The last timetable I got from them, which was several years ago, was that the population of Earth would peak somewhere short of 9 billion around the year 2025. Well, we're in the year 2025 and we're only at about 8.2 billion, and it's leveling off, a fairly significant leveling off taking place. In fact, parts of Asia and Africa are the only places that are still growing in population. If you look at a map of population growth, three-fourths of the world is in negative population growth. It doesn't seem that way because of immigration and things like that, but virtually every country in Europe is below replacement rate. Replacement is between 1.8 and 2.2 children per adult female. And right now, the ratio is somewhere between 1.4 and 1.6 in most of the European countries. Even in the Americas, South America, there's a lot where it's at replacement, but there's countries in South America where it's below replacement, and certainly in North America, it's below replacement. So more and more deaths, fewer and fewer births. That's what is causing this. The deaths are increasing for the reasons that I've given in my earlier books, which is there are a lot of third density souls on Earth who need to have more third density experience. And Earth is now a fourth density planet. So therefore, they're not keeping pace with the increasing vibration of the Earth. And so they're going to choose to go to another third density planet that's better suited to their level of evolution. And this is already starting to happen. Now, there's many intermediate causes for the increased death rate. And of course, pollution is a big one, microplastics, GMOs, side effects from sharp objects in the arm, radiation, various other things. So there are definitely some triggers in the environment that are causing more people to leave their bodies. And then there's the decision by a lot of mothers not to have children, or to severely limit how many children they have, for different reasons. And, some people just don't want to bring up a child in such a crazy, chaotic world. Others don't feel like they can afford it financially to raise children. And, so there's a lot of reasons why the birth rate has dropped. The sperm count in men has dropped by 50% in the last 40 years, and the fertility rate in women has dropped by a similar percentage. And so it's actually getting harder for young couples to have children. And again, for the various long list, I mentioned a few, but there's a long list of factors that are causing decreases in fertility and potency. So there's that, as well as the increasing death rate due to the pollution and things like that. So those are secondary causes or intermediate causes, whereas the inability to keep up with the vibration of Earth is the root cause. So in terms of predictions,
spiritual reason and physical reasons, a number of physical reasons.
yeah. So 8.5 billion is the new ceiling we're looking at. And then it's going to start dropping. And by the year 2040, the prediction is 2 billion souls on Earth. Now, I know there's a lot of conspiracies about there's a depopulation agenda. And yes, there is a very small number of souls that would like to depopulate the Earth and might come up with various schemes for depopulating the Earth, such as blotting out the sun or getting rid of carbon dioxide or things like that. I think most people are smart enough if they've taken basic science in primary school or secondary school, they know that it's not a good idea to get rid of carbon dioxide, and it's only 0.04% of our atmosphere to begin with. So why would we want to get rid of carbon dioxide? And does the planet
Needed,
heat up and
actually.
cool down? Yeah, it does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So,
it's amazing
yeah.
what sometimes they tell that I think Bill Gates once said that trees are bad for emissions, and I'm like, what? So
So
anyway,
there's
we're not
there's
gonna
two
go.
possible words to describe that mentality. One is insanity and the other is evil, you know. So I guess you
I
have to pick
agree. I
between
agree.
those two choices,
Yeah, you have to be either crazy or you mean that. Okay, anyway.
or you really do want to get rid of human beings.
Yeah. So what do you think are the reasons for changing of the timeline? Because it looks like we're going into a more like what I call soft timeline, like more uh, kind to humankind in a way, not so harsh. This is what it looks like to me. What do you think are the reasons for that?
Well, we are waking up as a species, as a humanity, and I would say millions of souls every year are waking up to the fact that who we are vast, creative, spiritual beings having a human experience. And if you're a vast, creative, spiritual being, you're going to naturally put out a good vibration to humanity. And I think there's more and more people that are coming to that place. Even among the extremes of, well, we call them far left and far right in the West. And even within those extremes, you can see some goodness in people, you know, that's starting to come out more and more. There's one guy about as far on the right wing side of this political spectrum as you could possibly get, you know, and this guy was interviewing uh, a luminary, one of the luminaries that we would, Greg Braden, in case you've not heard of him.
Um,
He's pretty well known in the West. And
mhm.
they were discussing enlightenment, and they were, you know, and then you also have people on the other extreme of the spectrum the same way. You know, we have some of those people around here that would be considered far left, and so people are starting to realize that, you know, this polarization is not working. And, you know, being violently against someone or worshiping them, you know, as the case is a certain politician in the West, that people are either kneeling at the altar as though he were Jesus, or they hate him so much they can't think straight. You know, these two extremes. And so people are starting to realize, wait a minute, you know, we need to come back into balance. And I think you're starting to sense this movement towards coming back into balance, to let go of the hate and let go of the worshiping the idols, you know, and realize, hey, let's find a middle place, somewhere that's healthy to view life from. And that's why I teach workshops like how to achieve neutrality or transcending the matrix, you know, these kind of workshops, because it's so important to recognize where are we polarized? Where are we fighting within ourself, different parts of ourself fighting each other, and this sort of thing. And so I do think there's a timeline emerging, which is a gentler timeline. We still have a ways to go to really get there on a big scale, but I think you're sensing this gentler timeline that's emerging that says, wait a minute, we need to be kind to one another. We need to stop the fighting, stop the wars, and really just recognize we're all children of God. We're all perfect, whole, complete beings having a human experience.
Yeah, that's true. I do agree with you. I also think the same that because of this widespread awakening that's taking place, our timelines are becoming more gentle. This is what I strongly believe in, observing, just observing what's happening. So that's beautiful. Um, so now I have a few questions more on the practical side from people who are, you know, reading your books and coming to your workshops. One question is the following. How can you tell the difference between higher self, spirit guides, angels, and other spiritual beings when you are doing a meditation or a channeling or trying to get in contact with your um,
Okay.
upper planes in a way?
Well, I'm blessed with having both clairvoyance, or having all three: clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience. Clairvoyance is a little stronger than the hearing and feeling, so the seeing inwardly is a little stronger. Every being has what I call a soul signature. They have a unique vibration that's different than every other being. And after I've worked with souls for a particular period of time, I become more aware of their soul signature. And I have a very small group of souls that I channel. And basically, I can say them all in a few seconds. There's my personal spirit guide, Leah. There's the Arcturians. There's the founders, and there's Lord Sananda, and occasionally Thoth and Isis, and occasionally Archangel Michael, but those are not very often. And that's it. I don't, other than my higher self, that's my group that I work with. And so I know them very well. There's no chance of getting deceived by negative beings or anything like that. But if you're just starting out channeling, then you want to be very discerning. You want to really put the messages to the test. Are these messages truly helping me as a spiritual being evolve and grow? Are they helping others evolve and grow? Is there any judgment embedded in the message? Are they looking across to us as equal spiritual beings, or are they looking down on us like miserable little creatures down on a prison planet? You know, these are the things to weigh when you're looking at the beings. How do I see them if you are clairvoyant? Do they look like beautiful, bright, light beings, or do they have kind of a scary appearance? Or if you aren't able to see them clairvoyantly, what are they saying? You know, what's the tone of their voice? Do they sound like they're impatient with humanity? What's wrong with humanity? Why don't you all wake up? Or is it more loving and acknowledging the growth that we've done and encouraging us to grow further? And then, of course, the feeling. Does it feel peaceful? Do these beings bring a feeling of clarity and peace, or do you get agitated and nervous whenever they come in? So these are the things to consider for those of you listening to this, watching this, that want to be channels, that want to work with spirit guides. All of us have guardian angels that are assigned just to us. There's enough guardian angels to go around, even for billions of souls. And most of them are what I call hands-off guardian angels, meaning they only come in when you call them, or maybe you have a life-threatening situation and they're trying to keep you from getting in an accident or something like that. And sometimes you can use them for things like finding a parking space in a big city and things like that. Um, but usually they stay in the background, just kind of guiding at a distance. And then if there are some beings who are a little bit assertive. My guides, the Arcturians, back when I was first starting to work with them, were a little bit assertive. We really want to work with you. We think you're the right person to work with. And so they really encouraged me to work with them. They would pop in whenever they felt it was appropriate to pop in. They were careful not to violate my free will, but they were a little bit pushy, I guess you could say, in the beginning. We really want to work with you. We think you're the right person to work with. So you might get guides like that occasionally that are kind of prodding you. Well, every time I meditate, I see these beings coming to me. What do they want from me? You know, you may get that kind of a visitation. And, you know, be patient. You know, it takes time to develop clairvoyance. It takes time to really trust your guides once you realize, oh yeah, these are beings of light. They're loving beings, but maybe I still don't fully trust them. You know, so take your time, be patient, and you know, take a workshop in developing your abilities, you know, whether it's from me or someone else, and you will get to be aware of your cosmic family. We have earthly family and we have a cosmic family, and you're going to start feeling like you're a member of the cosmic family.
Beautiful answer. So yeah, you can learn to feel from the beginning if it's a positive or a negative energy, but in more details, what specifically kind of energy, what soul signature it comes with experience when you get to know what certain being is like. So
So
definitely.
you seek them out and they seek you out. It's kind of a mutual thing, you know.
Yeah, and definitely going to study to get a bigger database inner database what it's like is very helpful. So I definitely support that. Another question I have is I thought interesting. So what do you think, or in your opinion, are Amenti holes and how can they be accessed and used?
Did you say halls of Amenti? I didn't hear that.
Yes, holes of
The halls
Amenti.
of Amenti, yes. It's interesting that they just discovered the halls of Amenti, a bunch of geologists. And this is one of those Mandela effects, which are a real thing. Actually are changes to the timeline because they weren't supposed to discover that until Earth reached a much higher vibration. But somehow they did manage to discover the halls of Amenti. Even the towering columns that I have in my meditations showed up on their scans. And so that's quite interesting. And I just did a workshop recently on the Akashic Records. And the Halls of Amenti, the Hall of Records underneath the Great Pyramid, is the earthly version of the Akashic Records. It's like a branch of the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records themselves are a branch of what I would call the universal mind or the wisdom of God, I guess you could call it. And so anyone can access the Akashic Records. There are limitations, as you might expect, if it violates free will of a soul for you to be accessing that soul's records, then you'll get a message from what we call the karmic guardians. Those records are not available right now. It would be a violation of that soul's free will for you to access those records. But generally speaking, there aren't a lot of restrictions on what you can download from the Akashic Records. And I know that I was just in Egypt a few weeks ago, well, several weeks ago now, and it was interesting to see that there were some Mandela effects. There were changes in the King's Chamber. There were some things that couldn't be explained. And I even talked to my guide who leads people there frequently, and he said, "Yeah, I can't explain it either. There's been some changes in the King's Chamber. The earthquake cracks have changed and things like that." And some of the temples, some of the hieroglyphs, petroglyphs, paintings have changed. And it's not due to weather and stuff like that, or it's not due to the Egyptologists altering them, you know. So, yeah, there's a lot going on in Egypt right now, and the halls of Amenti being discovered, I think, is a big one. It indicates maybe we're ready for more advanced ascension than we thought we were ready.
So you think that those columns that the scientists have discovered underneath the Giza pyramids are the halls of Amenti?
I think it's the area above the halls of Amenti because the halls of Amenti are 200 or 300 meters below what they're seeing. And there's long corridors with the discs, which are etheric discs or causal plane discs. They're not like physical discs, although they might discover something that's quasi-physical. It somewhat has a physical component to it, such as corridors that contain these halls of records. They may actually find the corridors.
Interesting. Very fascinating. I wonder how much they're going to share with the public, which they usually don't. You know, they find things and then they keep it to themselves.
Well, fortunately, the internet is as censored as it is still a pretty good source of finding these things out. There's a lot of sites that are not as censored as the big sites, and you can find Substacks and things like that where scientists are discovering their findings, and yeah.
That's true. And what do you personally think about the information that's some people think it's being hidden, some people think it's fake, that some time ago, not actually very long ago, there were very big people living on Earth, much taller than they are now, like 3, 4, and above meters tall. What do you think about that?
Yes, it's in the Bible. I think it's Genesis chapter 18. It talks about the giant race that was on the earth. And there are skeletons that have been discovered that could no way that could these skeletons have been faked. Somebody would have had to gone through such tremendous amount of detail over periods of years trying to make one of these skeletons, so it's pretty clear that there were beings that were, well over 2 meters tall, maybe even approaching 3 meters tall at different points in the evolution of Earth. And I think there are still some of these skeletons, if you know where to go, where to find them. I think they're under heavy guard for obvious reasons. So you'd have to really know the right people to get to see one of these skeletons.
Mhm.
These are beings, according to my information, from the Antares star system, which is a red giant star. And the beings are sort of like red giants. They have reddish colored skin and 2.5 meters tall, and huge arms and legs. I mean, their waist would come up to here on me probably. Um, so
Why do you think this information is hidden? I mean, what's the big deal? Okay, they were tall people, so what? Why they're trying to hide it?
Well, the church and the state, they don't want people figuring out our true history. They want us to believe that we were evolved from the chimpanzee or the ape, and that our primal brain, our limbic brain, and our reptilian brain are the dominant features of the human being, and that when it all comes down to it, it's all about the survival of the fittest, the Darwinist theory. Darwin did get a few things right in his theory of evolution, but he got a lot that was incorrect. So the so-called powers that be don't want us knowing, first of all, that we're powerful, creative, spiritual beings, that we don't have to bow down to the so-called power elite or dark cabal or dark Illuminati, whatever you want to call them. And if they knew that there had been various extraterrestrial races on the Earth for millions of years, and that we ourselves are a byproduct of extraterrestrial DNA tampering, then we would be a lot less willing to go along with being controlled by various extraterrestrial races that are controlling the humans behind the scenes. I write about this in my earlier books. The reptilians from the Rigel star system in Orion, Alpha Draconis, the beings from various systems in the Draco constellation, and some of the dark Syrians. That these are the three main negative groups that have been trying to control humanity for hundreds of thousands of years, and they don't want to be found out. Even though anybody who really does serious research can find out what I'm talking about. They're called the Nephilim in some teachings, the Archons in other teachings, ancient Sumerian writings, you can find them, the Hammadi texts, you can find them. They're in a lot of places. There are Emerald Tablets of Thoth, where he talks extensively about the halls of Amenti. I mean, there's evidence. And if people are serious about discovering the evidence, they can find it.
That's true. And surprisingly about Darwin, in the beginning, I mean, at first, we have to mention that he believed in God, and now his theory is being used against. But then at the end of his life, he actually refused popularizing his theory, but it was popularized nonetheless. He refused his own theory at the end of his life. So, but
Well, I
anyway.
think that the big one is that we didn't evolve from the ape or chimpanzee, and a 5-year-old in kindergarten could figure that out. It doesn't take years and years of meticulous research to find that out. All you have to do is study the pattern of mutations among the species.
Yeah, the genetics proves
Because
that as well.
the apes and chimpanzees are a different species. They're evolving on a different continuum than the human being. And if that weren't the case, they wouldn't be here anymore. They would have all converted into human beings. There wouldn't still be apes and chimpanzees on the earth, because it's the 100th monkey theory that eventually all the species mutates. just as we're eventually going to mutate into the crystal light body form. A few of us, maybe a few yogis high up in the mountains, have already attained that state, but eventually all of humanity, that whoever's left after the earth changes calm down, will be on that path of ascension.
Mhm. And do you think, is it actually possible to live a life and never get to your purpose? Like a soul comes in, has its own purpose planned out, and then something happens and it never gets to it. Is that a reality?
I would say 3/4 of humanity, unfortunately, fall into that category. And I'm including the category of, well, I don't know why I'm here. I'm just going to experience the earth. Okay, that will include that large segment of the population that's just kind of along for the ride. It's like, I have a body. I'm on planet Earth, and that's as far as their awareness goes. And then they're more concerned with the latest celebrities or the latest football scores or whatever their life revolves around that's external to themselves. And they only go internal if something really awful happens in their life and it's like, oh my God, I guess I better go to a therapist, I'm so depressed. Then they start to do something. But if life is relatively easy for them, they're content to sit on the sofa and watch television. And you know I'm oversimplifying, of course, but
Mm.
and that's still close to 3/4 of humanity, but they blindly believe what's on the television or what the government or the church tells them. And they don't really seriously question, oh, yeah, my body has to get sicker and sicker as I get older and older, and then eventually I'm going to die. And they don't question that.
Yeah, of course. People believe what they're told. Um, and so now that we're coming to a conclusion here with our interview, I'm done with the question that I have selected. Is there like any message that you would like to share personally? Of course, I know you've in all of the past years you have shared so many messages, but at this point, what do you think is important to say to those who are watching us?
Well, it's going to be similar to previous years when we've done this, and that is that we have to understand who we are. We have to know who we are. And when I say we're powerful, creative, spiritual beings, well, that sounds really nice and flowery and beautiful, but what does that really mean? It's easy to prove. I can prove it in 2 minutes, but the powerful part, we're so powerful that we can believe we're powerless, and guess what? We'll have an experience of being powerless because of that belief. And we're creative, we're creating all the time, not necessarily masterpiece paintings, but we're creating various things in our life all the time. And spiritual, well, we've already proven that with this light spectrum thing and how just a narrow little piece that we're aware of with our physical senses. So we're powerful, creative, spiritual beings, but what does that mean in our everyday life? Does it mean that we blindly believe that we have to put up with dictators and tyrants and limiting belief systems? Well, if we're powerful, then we don't have to put up with that. That's the point. And so we start with our own life, our own relationships. Maybe we have a spouse and children, or maybe we're, in some type of group setting with people. So we start by working on those relationships. How can I see my spouse differently? How can I see my children differently? Instead of, constantly picking fights with them because they don't match my model of how they should be. It's like, oh, what is really going on here? What is the truth of this person I live with? Or if you don't live with someone, maybe it's the neighbor or whatever. What is the real truth behind this person? Who are they really? Who am I really? So that's the first question. And I think we have to start with that. And life is our mirror. And you can tell what's in your consciousness by the mirror you see out in the world. If you react violently to something you see, then there's something in you that's being triggered by that. So these are the places to start. What is it that makes me angry? What gets me upset? And over time, you might do enough work on yourself that you rarely get angry or upset. Um, but that's a good place to start. You know, what is it about life that is where are the places I feel stuck? Where do I need to do the work on myself? Because we all need to do the work on ourselves, and it's crucial at this time that we do the work on ourselves, whether it's your students, my students, or somebody else's students. You know, find a teacher, find a healer, a therapist that you feel comfortable with, that is present with you. That I always say that therapy is 90% being present with another person and 10% technique. It's the ability to be present with each other. And that means you're listening to more than just what they're saying. You're tuning into their energy field. If it's a family member and they're upset about something, you're tuning in to the energy field around their body.
So, and what were the therapies that were the most powerful in your life, that made a real impact in your life? What modalities or what?
Well, in addition to timeline healing, I would say the Silva method was one that I started out with, which is similar to hypnotherapy in many ways, guided meditation and hypnotherapy combined in some ways. So those are two that hypnotherapy and the Silva method are two that I've worked with, along with guided meditation. A lot of people are working with past life regression or theta healing. There's the work with the Institute of Reincarnation that you're familiar with. So there are a lot of those types of tools. I did, of course, went through Reiki many years ago, but I don't use Reiki that much. I think it's a good beginning tool. Some people are really big on reconnection and acupressure, bioenergetics, various forms of holistic massage. I think they're all valuable. But personally, for me, the ones where I reprogram my subconscious mind, which would be the Silva method and hypnotherapy and guided meditation, I think those are the big ones. And there's elements of those in timeline healing.
And I know that you have a number of meditations that were created similar to like hypnotherapy kind of methods,
I
or there
do,
were some
yes.
forms, yeah.
There's one called Reprogramming the Subconscious Mind, which I do in some of my live workshops also. And this is where you go down into the deeper layers of the subconscious mind and you treat the subconscious mind like a computer, more specifically like the hard drive on your computer. And if you don't like what's on your computer screen, well, guess what? You need to change the programs that are sitting on your hard drive. And then there's the superconscious mind that's like the internet. And so you can also, you know, choose to download different programs off the internet if you don't like what you're getting. So it's a lot like a computer. The mind is very much like a computer. So we go in and we take the core negative beliefs and we delete those files and we put in positive affirmations such as I'm a beautiful child of God, I'm innocent child of God, and God loves me and I deserve God's love. These kind of thoughts we replace it with.
Well, thank you for sharing, Sal. As always, it
Well,
has
it's
been a
been a
pleasure.
pleasure to be a part of this again. I'm glad we finally found a time that worked.
Yes, that's true. And for everyone, I just want to say that that Sal has a lot of workshops on different topics that you can join, and all the information about that will be in underneath this video. All the links for recordings or for the actual that are upcoming workshops, you can access them.
I think there may be still a few spaces left in the timeline healing workshop that's beginning in a couple of days.
Yeah, for those who are really quick. And so, Sal, thank you so much for sharing always very deep and very widening. And I hope it was interesting for those who took time to be with us. And please leave your comments. And
And it's always great talking with you. And I love the work you're doing. You've really taken a lot of this and really run with it.
well, yes, a lot of your work was seeded in me and became flowers, became work that continued, like your work continued through me. So, you know, it's beautiful.
Well, I'm very grateful for the work you're doing and all the people you're reaching. So
Same for me. I'm so grateful for you continuing your work for so long, and I think you can be proud of what you have done in over all of these years. So thank you
thank
for
you. And
all of it
it's
you've done.
again, have a wonderful rest of the day. And to all of you, hope to see you in some of the workshops.
Yes, thank you everyone for being with us, and yes, I hope you get to be in Sal's workshops because they're amazing. So see you next time, and thank you, Sal. Also, have a great day.
Bye for now.
Bye.